Yes, Andy, the company that makes the Gripen told CTV News that 10,000 research and manufacturing jobs could land in Canada.
The federal government has quietly begun buying key components for more F-35 fighter jets.
But now the Prime Minister has confirmed his government has quietly been making payments to potentially purchase more of these fighter jets.
Two major defense companies are in a battle for the future of Canada's fighter jet fleet. Sweden's Saab Gripen versus U.S. firm Lockheed Martin's F-35.
The Gripen never gets respect in fighter jet debates. Critics call it underpowered, undersized, and outclassed. A cheap alternative for countries that cannot afford real air superiority. One analyst compared it to sending a sedan to race against supercars. The kind of fighter you settle for, not the one you choose. Then came Red Flag Alaska 2006. Day 1. Swedish Gripens recorded 10 kills against NATO's finest. 0 losses. One Swedish pilot shot down 5 F-16s in a single engagement. The U.S. Air Force refused to confirm the numbers publicly. But Sweden received another invitation the following year. That silence spoke louder than any official statement. So what actually happened in those Alaskan skies? And why should Canada be paying very close attention right now? The dismissal of the Gripen made sense on paper for years. Compare the raw specifications and the verdict seems obvious. Single engine versus twin engines. Lighter payload versus heavier firepower. A neutral country's defensive tool versus battle-tested American war machines, proven in actual combat across multiple continents. The F-15 Eagle owned the skies for decades with an unmatched combat record. Its kill ratio remained untouchable across multiple conflicts spanning generations. The F-16 Fighting Falcon had proven itself from Desert Storm to Afghanistan to Libya. Real wars, real victories, real credibility earned in blood and fire against enemies who shot back. The Eurofighter Typhoon carried European ambition in every component. Engineers designed it specifically to counter advanced Soviet fighters during the Cold War. It represented billions in investment and decades of multinational cooperation between nations that rarely agreed on anything. Against these giants, Sweden offered something modest at best. A fighter from a country that avoided war for 200 years. No combat footage existed for analysts to study. No dramatic kills to showcase in promotional materials. No powerful alliance pushing it onto the global market with political pressure. Defense magazines slotted the Gripen into a predictable category. Budget-friendly, maintenance-efficient, adequate for peacetime patrols over quiet borders. Not built for brutal demands of contested airspace where milliseconds determine who lives and who dies. That reputation stuck for years and influenced procurement decisions worldwide. Officers in dozens of countries absorbed it as established fact. The Gripen became the fighter you bought when you could not afford something better. The compromise choice. The backup option. Red Flag Alaska was designed to shatter exactly these kinds of comfortable assumptions. The U.S. Air Force created this exercise to push pilots beyond comfortable limits into territory resembling actual warfare. The environment simulates real combat with electronic warfare saturating communications, degraded support systems, and relentless pressure from every direction. Mistakes carry consequences that end careers. Adaptation determines survival. Reputation built over decades means nothing once engagement begins. Sweden entered this arena in 2006 with something to prove and everything to lose. A poor showing would confirm every criticism ever leveled at the aircraft. The Swedish contingent drew the red team assignment. They would play the adversary against Western air power at its absolute finest. The opposition lineup was deliberately intimidating. F-16 Block 50 variants, carrying the latest American avionics and weapons systems. Eurofighter Typhoons representing European technological achievement at its peak. F-15C Eagles with decades of dominance backing every maneuver. Exercise controllers constrained support systems to simulate real combat conditions. Airborne early warning coverage operated at reduced capacity that left gaps in coverage. Ground-based assistance was limited to what might survive actual warfare. The Gripens would face elite opponents without the safety nets that peacetime training usually provides. Swedish pilots had prepared something their opponents did not expect. Traditional fighter tactics depend on radar to build situational awareness of the battle space. But radar emissions reveal position to anyone listening with the right equipment. The more you search, the more you expose yourself. Every sweep announces exactly where you are to enemies hunting for signals. The Gripen formation exploited their advanced data link architecture to solve this fundamental problem. One aircraft would activate radar briefly, sweep the battle space for threats and targets, and instantly distribute that information to every wingman through encrypted channels. Remaining pilots maintained complete electronic silence while seeing everything their teammate discovered. Enemy pilots hunting for radar emissions found nothing but empty sky. The Gripens appeared invisible while maintaining perfect awareness of the developing battle around them. When engagements began, Swedish pilots consistently held positioning advantages their opponents never anticipated and could not overcome. Day 1 results sent shockwaves through observer galleries filled with senior officers from multiple nations. Swedish sources documented 10 air-to-air kills during the opening phase of combat. Casualties included 1 Eurofighter Typhoon and 5 F-16 Block 50s flown by highly experienced American pilots who had trained for years. Swedish losses stood at 0 across every engagement. One engagement entered unofficial legend among pilots who witnessed it. A single Gripen pilot found himself facing 5 F-16s in close-range combat with no escape route. The scenario should have ended quickly, with Swedish defeat. The numbers demanded it. Instead, that lone pilot outmaneuvered and defeated all 5 opponents without taking any damage. 5 kills, 1 pilot, 0 losses. Beyond individual victories, the Gripen demonstrated something equally valuable for sustained military operations. It was the only aircraft completing every scheduled sortie regardless of weather conditions throughout the entire exercise. Reliability under sustained pressure matters as much as performance in isolated engagements when wars last months. The U.S. Air Force never officially confirmed Swedish claims. Exercise results often remain classified or disputed depending on political sensitivities. But one fact spoke louder than any statement. Sweden received invitations to return year after year. Skeptics demanded independent verification. Swedish sources had obvious motivation to emphasize favorable outcomes. Exercises involve rules that can skew results. The criticism was legitimate and deserved response. Norway provided the answer that silenced doubters. In separate engagements, 3 Swedish Gripens faced 5 Royal Norwegian Air Force F-16s. Norwegian pilots trained to full NATO standards with extensive operational experience. Their aircraft represented variants flown by alliance members worldwide in actual missions. Round 1 went to Sweden decisively. Round 2 repeated the outcome with similar margins. Round 3 finished 5-1 favoring Gripens, with Norway managing only a single kill across all 3 engagements despite numerical advantage. These results came from a NATO member with 0 commercial interest in Swedish success. Official military documentation recorded the outcomes through proper channels. The implications became impossible to dismiss. A fighter dismissed as budget compromise had consistently defeated combat-proven aircraft in demanding conditions that simulated real warfare. One objection remained. Exercises measure potential in controlled environments. Real operations introduce chaos that simulations cannot replicate. Political constraints, mechanical failures, supply disruptions, and unpredictable enemies shape outcomes in ways training never captures. March 2024 eliminated that objection permanently. Sweden joined NATO as its 32nd member after 2 centuries of official neutrality. The transition happened with stunning speed that surprised alliance planners. Within 24 hours of formal accession, Gripens flew combat air patrol under NATO command authority. Swedish pilots coordinated with Belgian F-16s to intercept a Russian Il-24 operating without authorization over the Baltic Sea. Hours later, Gripens and German Eurofighters intercepted another Russian aircraft in a separate incident requiring immediate response. No integration delays slowed the transition. No gradual familiarization period eased Swedish forces into operations. Swedish aircraft operated within NATO command structures, as though decades of partnership already existed rather than mere hours. The pattern continued through 2025 without interruption. Gripens deployed to Poland for enhanced air policing along NATO's tense eastern flank. Swedish pilots flew alongside British Eurofighter Typhoons, conducting regular intercepts of Russian aircraft probing and testing Allied airspace. These were not exercises with safety margins. Real aircraft carrying real weapons, real tensions between nuclear powers, real potential for escalation that could reshape global politics. The Gripen performed exactly as exercise results predicted. Consistent, reliable, effective under genuine pressure. This operational record forced Canada to confront uncomfortable questions that procurement officials had avoided. Ottawa had committed to 88 F-35 Lightning II aircraft, 16 already operated under Canadian control. The program promised stealth capability, advanced sensors, and seamless integration with American forces for decades. Then trade tensions between Washington and Ottawa escalated dramatically. Alliance reliability that seemed guaranteed suddenly felt conditional. The assumption that American partnership would remain stable regardless of political changes collapsed almost overnight. Sweden offered something unprecedented in fighter procurement history. Saab proposed complete Gripen production in Canada. Not assembly of imported components. Actual manufacturing capability rooted in Canadian industry and controlled by Canadian decisions. 72 fighters plus 6 Global Eye airborne early warning aircraft built in partnership with Bombardier using Canadian workers. Economic impact was substantial enough to reshape regional economies. 12,600 jobs across multiple provinces. 9,000 from Gripen production directly. 3,600 from Global Eye manufacturing. Supply chains rooted entirely in Canadian industry rather than dependent on foreign political decisions. The offer included what American manufacturers never provide to any customer: full technology transfer with complete source code access. Canadian engineers would control modifications, upgrades, and weapons integration without requiring foreign approval or waiting for permission. True operational sovereignty rather than dependent partnership. Brazil demonstrated this model works in practice. Brazilian engineers trained in Sweden and returned with expertise. Local suppliers entered production chains and developed capabilities. A domestic aerospace ecosystem developed around the program. Export opportunities followed as other nations recognized Brazilian independence. Canada could follow the same path toward genuine sovereignty. Ukraine intends to purchase over 100 Gripens for post-war reconstruction. France and Germany have shown interest in Global Eye platforms for their own forces. Canadian production could serve these markets, transforming Ottawa from perpetual customer into global competitor. Operating costs reinforce the argument powerfully. The Gripen runs approximately $22,000 per flight hour. The F-35 exceeds $46,000. Across decades of service, that difference compounds into billions available for training, additional aircraft, or industrial investment. Washington recognized the threat. This alternative represented to American dominance. The American ambassador warned that abandoning the F-35 could damage NORAD cooperation. The message was unmistakable. This decision carried consequences extending beyond aircraft specifications. The pressure revealed what the debate was actually about. Not radar cross-sections or payload capacity. Control. Independence. Whether middle powers could maintain sovereignty while remaining within Western alliance structures. The Gripen offers an answer. Washington finds deeply uncomfortable. Effective air power without permanent dependency. Operational capability without surrendering control. Alliance membership without subordination to American priorities. Every pilot who once dismissed the Gripen as overrated has watched evidence accumulate year after year. Exercise victories that defied expectations. Operational deployments proving reliability. Seamless NATO integration exceeding predictions. A record specification sheets never anticipated. Canada now faces a choice that will echo for decades. Accept dependency for theoretical superiority, or pursue independence with proven capability. The pilots who laughed at the Gripen are no longer laughing. The question is whether Canadian leadership has been paying attention. Subscribe for continued coverage as this decision unfolds. The consequences extend far beyond any single aircraft.